Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Massive destruction everywhere. Hurricane Laura pounded Louisiana for 11 hours, unleashing winds of 150 miles an hour.
That's right. And Laura took the lives of at least 6 people, demolished homes and businesses, and left thousands without power and water. Paul Strand has the story.
People are picking up the pieces after Laura raged for 11 hours across Louisiana as a massive hurricane, taking the lives of at least 6 people in the state and knocking out power for 900,000, leaving behind a trail of devastation. But Governor John Bel Edwards says it could have been worse.
First of all, it is clear that we did not sustain and suffer the absolute catastrophic damage that we thought was likely based on the forecast we had last night. But we have sustained a tremendous amount of damage.
Hundreds of thousands fled from the hurricane, but some stayed behind. Those who didn't evacuate faced 150-mile-an-hour winds and hid out where they could.
There was 4 of us. It was like a jigsaw puzzle in this closet. We were on top of each other, just holding each other, crying.
Areas around hard-hit Lake Charles saw massive and widespread destruction. Lines and trees down everywhere, homes crushed, and vehicles knocked over. Businesses damaged. CBN contributor Chuck Holton is in Lake Charles, where wind made the biggest impact, knocking out power and water service.
One of the places that this water shortage is most acute is right here at St. Patrick's Hospital. They need tanker trucks like this to bring them more than 30,000 gallons of water a day to be able to serve the 150 or 200 patients who are being cared for here. And if they don't get that water, they're going to have to shut down this hospital and evacuate all the patients to someplace else in the state.
Hospitals don't have water. We're providing them water right now on an emergency basis, but the length of time it would take to repair the water mains, to identify the breaks and repair them, it could require for evacuating the hospitals, which would be, if we can avoid that, we will.
CBN's Operation Blessing arrived in Louisiana shortly before the storm hit and is helping those in need in the midst of Laura's devastation.
Operation Blessing and our assessment team is on the ground in Louisiana, ready to serve the community, specifically with the construction trailer that we already have here, filled with materials to do tarping on roofs, mucking and gutting of houses that have been flooded, and tree removal with our chainsaws and any kind of debris cleanup that's needed for the community here.
Operation Blessing's team will be working in Lake Charles and surrounding areas, connecting with local church leadership to see what the needs are in those communities. Paul Strand, CBN News.
Well, if you want to help with the cleanup, we have an Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. All you have to do is call us, 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to contribute. I want to be a part of the relief effort in Louisiana. You can write to us, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Or you can call us or go to cbn.com. There's a place on the giving page where you can designate your gift to Operation Blessing Disaster Relief. In other news, the president spoke on the White House lawn, where he accepted his party's nomination in front of roughly 1,500 supporters. CBN's White House correspondent Ben Kennedy brings us the story.
President Trump called this the most important election in the history of our country. During his speech, he made the bold promise of delivering a coronavirus vaccine by the end of the year, if not sooner.
Let us pray.
Evangelist Franklin Graham opened the last night of the RNC in prayer.
Our country is facing trouble. Tens of thousands are in the path of a deadly storm. The pandemic has gripped millions of hearts with fear. We're divided.
Speakers talked about how prayer is needed more than ever as protests and riots spike nationwide.
Black Lives Matter and Antifa sprang into action, and in a flash, they hijacked the peaceful protests into vicious, brutal riots. Soon, protests turned into riots in many other American cities.
Cities like St. Louis, where retired police captain David Dorn was killed during violent protests in the wake of George Floyd's death. The officer's widow could not hold back tears when sharing his story.
David is never coming back to me. He was murdered by people who didn't know and just didn't care.
Ann pointed out how President Trump was willing to deploy the National Guard to protect people.
Violence and destruction are not legitimate forms of protest. They do not safeguard Black lives. They only destroy them. President Trump understands this.
Alice Johnson recounted how the president cared by commuting her sentence of life in prison for drug offenses.
When President Trump heard about me, about the injustice of my story, he saw me as a person. He had compassion, and he acted.
Tonight, I stand before you as the proud daughter of the people's president.
First daughter and presidential advisor introduced her father, President Donald Trump.
My fellow Americans, our First Lady and the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
The crowd gathered on the South Lawn welcomed Trump as he delivered his nomination acceptance speech.
I profoundly accept this nomination for President of the United States.
Trump then took aim at his opponent.
Joe Biden is not a savior of America's soul. He is the destroyer of America's jobs, and if given the chance, he will be the destroyer of American greatness. Tonight, I ask you a simple question. How can the Democrat Party ask to lead our country when it spends so much time tearing down our country?
He touted the strong economy, trade deals, low unemployment, Supreme Court picks, and his response to the coronavirus for reasons to vote Trump in November.
And when I'm reelected, the best is yet to come.
Next up is the first debate between Trump and Biden. Although House Speaker Nancy Pelosi advised on Thursday for the Democrat not to participate, no time or date has been set, but both parties have agreed to at least 3 debates before November 3rd. Ben Kennedy, CBN News.
Well, with us now from our Washington bureau is our CBN News chief political analyst, David Brody. David, how do you rate the president's speech last night?
Well, I think the grade map is a bit all over the place. First of all, from a content perspective, look, it was an A, but let's do a couple disclaimers. I'll be honest with you. I thought it was too long of a speech. He gets a D for the length of the speech, over 70 minutes or so, and I thought he was a bit flat, quite frankly, Gordon. So I'll give him a C on presentation. I know. Why do I have a feeling a phone might ring in a moment? But it's true. I mean, he was just kind of flat. And I think part of the reason for that, Gordon, is you had it at the White House, right? So it's very ceremonial, very prestigious, very gravitas surrounding. And yet you had folks in the crowd who wanted to make it a MAGA rally. And so he was kind of caught between a MAGA rally and being at the White House. He was trying to split the difference. I didn't think it worked. Now, having said that, from a content perspective, I thought he did a very good job, and I think it's a winning message in 2020 as it relates to law and order and public safety, and Biden is really bad for America, specifically his policies that he promotes with the far left. So, you know, content-wise, if you can get through all of the disclaimers, I thought overall it was pretty good.
Well, it seems like he's running on his record. There was a lot of anticipation it would be a lot of Biden bashing. He did that, but that wasn't the bulk of it. The bulk of it was talking about his record.
You know, Gordon, that's a really good point. That was something that caught my eye, too. You know, we've heard a lot, especially from Mike Pence, who goes around saying promises made, promises kept. That's a big line that Mike Pence likes to use on the campaign trail, or the virtual campaign trail. And that's what we saw from the president Thursday night. I thought that was actually pretty effective. He went down the litany of, hey, look, I mean, not that he would say it this way, but a lot of others said it, which is, you might not like me necessarily, but I do deliver, and evangelicals can attest to that for sure. So I thought it was pretty effective. And I also will say, beyond just the Biden bashing, he actually had a forward-looking agenda. 10 million new jobs that he plans to create. He says we'll have a vaccine by the end of the year. And he went down a lot of other issues as well. So it wasn't just a Biden bash-a-thon.
Is this the end of conventions? It seemed like for both parties, the convention really didn't happen. A lot of that has to do with the virus, but all of it has to do with the virus. But are conventions now over?
No, I don't think conventions are over. I think this is a blip, Gordon. I really do. Look, I think conventions are important. They're probably not as important this year, but remember, conventions, as you know, Gordon, have to do with energy and motivation, not just around the country, but in the hall specifically. In other words, that's a place to strategize and get people together and caucus and meet and get a game plan. It's a little bit harder to do it virtually. So there is some value to it just from a on-the-ground, boots-on-the-ground perspective. I don't think so. It'll be interesting to find out what the bounce from this convention will be. You know, Joe Biden did not get any bounce from his convention. Hillary Clinton got a +4 bounce in 2016. Donald Trump also got a 4-point bounce as well in 2016. We'll see. My spidey sense, my political spidey sense, senses that this race is actually getting closer. I know we've seen a lot of the polls out there, but look, I got to tell you, not only do I believe, and we've reported on this actually, that there is a underlying secret Trump vote out there. Beyond all of that, you get the sense that the Republicans and Trump, they're really coalescing around this message of law and order. And I have to tell you that if riots in the streets continue and the coronavirus cases decrease, there's the path. I mean, just from a political standpoint and from an event standpoint, that could be the trick for Donald Trump in 2020.
Last question. Do you read anything into the ratings? It looks like the ratings for the Democrats weren't that great. We don't have the final ratings yet for last night, but it looks like the Republicans outrated the Democrats. Is there anything to that?
Well, the Democrats were pretty stilted, quite frankly, in their presentation. I mean, you know, great Eva Longoria and Julia Louis-Dreyfus and all that. But it just felt it was on tape. Most of it was very subdued, relatively boring. I mean, politics to begin with is not necessarily something you're going to say, hey, kids, let's all gather around, though we should gather around the television set. But it really wasn't presented well. This week was much different. So I'd be curious to see what the ratings are for the final ratings. I know the ratings weren't off to a great start on day one, but look, after last night, Gordon, Thursday night with the fireworks and the flags, I mean, I need to buy stock in flags and American flags. How many American flags am I going to see at the Republican National Convention? And then I still think they're picking up the fireworks this morning from the Washington Monument.
All right. Well, David, we'll be looking at riots. We'll be looking at virus cases. And if that's the path forward, that's the path forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon.